There comes a moment in your healing journey that doesn't look dramatic on the outside, but it changes everything on the inside. It's not the moment you stop crying. It's not even the moment you stop missing him. It's the moment you quietly sit with yourself and realize, I will never accept that again. No announcement, no audience, no applause. Just a calm, grounded decision that rises from a place deep within you. A place that has seen too much, felt too much, and finally understands its own worth. And that moment is where your non-negotiables are born. Because the truth is, heartbreak doesn't just break you. It reveals you. It shows you where you abandoned yourself, where you stayed too long, where you silenced your intuition just to keep someone else comfortable. And now, here you are. Not the same woman you used to be. Not as naive. Not as willing to settle. Not as afraid to walk away. But also, not entirely sure how to trust again. So, the question becomes, how do you move forward without repeating the past? How do you open your heart again, without losing yourself in the process? And the answer is this: you don't just look for the right person. You become the woman who knows what is no longer negotiable. Because non-negotiables are not about controlling someone else's behavior. They're about protecting your peace. They are the standards you create from the lessons you survived. And if you're honest, you already have them. You just haven't fully defined them yet. So, let's go there. Let's walk through this, not as a checklist, but as a journey back to yourself. Because determining your non-negotiables starts with telling yourself the truth about what you tolerated. Not what you hoped for. Not what you believed could change. But what actually happened. And I know, that part can be hard, because it requires you to revisit moments you tried to minimize. Moments where your intuition whispered, this isn't right. But you stayed anyway. Maybe it was the inconsistency, the way his words didn't match his actions. Maybe it was the emotional distance, the way you felt alone, even when he was right next to you. Maybe it was the disrespect, subtle at first, then undeniable. Or maybe it was the betrayal, the kind that didn't just break your heart, it shattered your sense of reality. And if you're really honest with yourself, you didn't just experience those things once. You experienced them repeatedly, and somewhere along the way, you started negotiating with your own pain. You told yourself, maybe I'm overreacting. Maybe this is just a rough patch. Maybe if I love harder, communicate better, stay longer, it will change. But it didn't. Because what you were really doing was abandoning your own boundaries in the hope that love would fix what it never should have had to fix. And this is where everything begins to shift. Because your non-negotiables are not created from your desires. They are created from your limits. They are born from the moment you say, I deserve better than what I accepted. So, the first step is giving yourself permission to acknowledge what hurt you without minimizing it. Not everyone will understand your pain. Not everyone will validate your experience, but you don't need them to. You lived it. And what hurt you matters. If inconsistency drained you, then consistency becomes a non-negotiable. If dishonesty broke you, then honesty becomes a non-negotiable. If emotional unavailability left you feeling invisible, then emotional presence becomes a non-negotiable. You see how this works? Your pain is not something to run from. It's something to learn from. Because every tear you cried, every night you overthought, every moment you questioned your worth, it was all pointing you towards something. Clarity. But clarity only comes when you're willing to sit with the truth. And the truth is, some of the things you accepted were never okay. Not because you're weak, but because you loved deeply. And women who love deeply often have to learn the hard way. That love without boundaries is self-betrayal. But here's the good news. You're not that version of yourself anymore. You've seen too much. You've felt too much. And now, you're ready to choose differently. So now we move to the next layer. Understanding the difference between preferences and non-negotiables. Because this is where a lot of women get confused. A preference is something you would like. A non-negotiable is something you require. A preference says, I'd like him to be this way. A non-negotiable says, I will not stay if he is not this way. Do you feel the difference? Preferences are flexible. Non-negotiables are firm. Preferences are negotiable. Non-negotiables are not. And this matters, because when everything becomes a standard, nothing actually gets upheld. So you have to get clear. What are the things you can compromise on? And what are the things you absolutely cannot? Maybe you prefer someone who shares your hobbies, but that's not a deal breaker. But respect? That's not optional. Communication? Not optional. Trust? Not optional. Because without those, you're not building a relationship. You're building another heartbreak. And you've already been there. You're not going back. Now here's where it gets even deeper. Determining your non-negotiables also requires you to take accountability, not for what someone else did to you, but for what you allowed. And I know that can feel uncomfortable, because it's easier to say, they hurt me. And that's true, but growth asks you to also say, and I stayed. Not to shame yourself, but to empower yourself, because if you stayed before, you can choose differently next time. If you ignored the signs before, you can honor them next time. If you lowered your standards before, you can raise them now. That's where your power is, not in controlling who someone else becomes, but in deciding what you will no longer accept. And this is where boundaries come in, because non-negotiables without boundaries are just wishes. You can say you value honesty, but if you stay when someone lies, that's not a non-negotiable. You can say you value respect, but if you tolerate disrespect, that's not a non-negotiable. Your actions are what define your standards. And that's why this journey is not just about making a list. It's about becoming a woman who honors her list. Even when it's hard, even when you like him, even when you see potential. Because potential is not reality. And one of the biggest lessons heartbreak teaches you is that you cannot fall in love with who someone could be. You have to accept who they are and decide if that aligns with the life you're building. Now let's talk about fear, because fear will try to talk you out of your non-negotiables. It will whisper things like, what if you're asking for too much? What if you end up alone? What if no one meets your standards? And I need you to hear this clearly. You are not asking for too much. You are just asking the wrong person. There is a difference, because the right person will not make you feel like your needs are burdens. The right person will meet your standards naturally, not reluctantly. The right person will bring you peace, not confusion, but you won't recognize that person if you're still willing to settle for less. That's why your non-negotiables matter. They protect you from going backwards. They keep you aligned with the version of yourself you're becoming. And yes, they might mean you walk away from things sooner. They might mean you spend more time alone. They might mean you disappoint people who are used to you having low standards. But what they also mean is that you no longer betray yourself to keep someone else. And that is freedom. Now let's bring this into something practical. If you were to sit down with yourself right now and define your non-negotiables, what would they be? Not based on what sounds good, not based on what others expect, but based on your lived experience. What do you need to feel safe? What do you need to feel respected? What do you need to feel valued? Maybe it's consistent communication, not disappearing acts. Maybe it's emotional availability, not avoidance. Maybe it's honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. Maybe it's loyalty, the kind that doesn't leave room for doubt. Maybe it's effort, the kind that doesn't make you question where you stand. Whatever it is, write it down, own it, and most importantly, honor it, because your future relationship will only be as healthy as the standards you uphold. And I want you to imagine something for a moment. Imagine yourself in your next relationship. Not the old version of you, but the healed version, the grounded version, the version of you who knows her worth, without needing validation. She doesn't over-explain herself. She doesn't chase. She doesn't ignore red flags. She observes. She discerns. She chooses. And when something doesn't align, she doesn't panic. She doesn't beg. She walks away with peace, because she knows that losing the wrong person is not a loss. It's alignment. And that is who you are becoming. Not someone who never feels, but someone who no longer loses herself in what she feels. Someone who can love deeply without abandoning herself. Someone who can open her heart without lowering her standards. And that is powerful, because the goal is not to become closed off. The goal is to become clear. Clear about who you are, clear about what you deserve, clear about what you will no longer tolerate. And when you have that clarity, you don't just attract differently, you choose differently, you move differently, you love differently, and the relationships you allow into your life reflect that. So, as you continue healing, don't rush into something new. Don't let loneliness convince you to settle. Don't let nostalgia pull you back into what broke you. Take your time, build your standards, strengthen your boundaries, and trust that what is meant for you will meet you at the level you've risen to. Because you didn't go through everything you went through just to end up in the same kind of situation. You went through it to become the woman who no longer accepts it. So the next time you feel unsure, the next time you question yourself, the next time you wonder if you're being too much, come back to this truth. Your non-negotiables are not walls. They are filters. They don't block love. They protect it. They ensure that the love you receive is worthy of the love you give, and you deserve that. Not someday, not when you're perfect, now, exactly as you are. So stand firm in what you've learned, stand confident in what you require, and most importantly, stand loyal to yourself, because the right relationship will never require you to betray that. If this message spoke to you, if you're in that space where you're learning to choose yourself again, I want you to know you're not alone. Your healing matters, your standards matter, and the version of you that refuses to settle anymore, she deserves to be protected. So don't just watch this and move on, take this with you. Subscribe to this channel, because this is your safe space to heal, rebuild, and rise into the woman you were always meant to be. You're not starting over, you're starting wiser. See you in the next video. Thanks for watching.